Stage is yours.
Okay, cool. Hey, everybody. This is my name is Frank Unpingco. I am the principal director of Domination Through Automation. And for this session, we are going to talk about organizational readiness for CMMC and what leadership needs to own. For anybody who's taken any leadership courses and stuff like that, this will probably be extremely repetitive, but we're going to try to gear it a little bit towards more just CMMC requirements and where you fit in. A lot of leaders, a lot of leadership may not be technical or part of the IT team, but it doesn't mean that they don't play a big role in what's expected from a CMMC compliant organization. So one of the first things we're going to talk about is what CMMC means to leadership. First thing I want to make clear is that this is not just a checkbox. Like CMMC should become part of your strategic kind of vision, your strategic plan, like honestly, your mission. And it should all kind of fit into how you do business. And leadership needs to understand that ultimately the federal government sees them in charge of protecting whether it's FCI or CUI, controlled unclassified information, regarding on if you're CMMC level 1 or CMC level 2. Those things kind of like play a big role, and ultimately it's leadership that's in kind of held responsible for making sure that these things take place. In regards to DoD contract eligibility, if you have your CMMC level 1 going for CMC level 2, this all is from a government perspective. This lands on you. Like you're supposed to be driving, the train. Like if you hire somebody else to do it, cool, but ultimately you're in charge of your company, so you're the one that makes it go. So leadership needs to kind of be aware of that. And your reputation and trust. I think this is actually going to start to play an extremely a large part of contract negotiations and like, who's awarded. I think I see the day coming from when an organization loses a bid or loses a contract because something happened and their reputation and trust within the federal government is lost. So organizations need to be ready for that. Now, ultimately, if leadership doesn't own it, no one will. And it has to start from up top. They have to be the one setting the example. And we'll kind of go over how to do that here. But this is what CMMC means to leadership. So the first thing I want to help like kind of convey is you want to develop a vision. Like any program, any mission, the first thing you want to do is what do you want to look like? And leaders must articulate a clear cybersecurity vision. And what that means is like that this is where your system security plan comes in. This is where your overarching message comes into play. And the vision should answer that question, why does CMMC matter to us beyond compliance? We talk about it a lot. There's a difference between being secure and being compliant. Compliant is one thing, and I think CMMC is a great start. But compared to other standards, CMMC falls like short. When you compare a CMMC compliant organization to a DoD compliant organization, there's going to be a big difference, and that's okay. For right now, that's okay. But as organizations look to become compliant, I want them to look at that as a baseline, as a foundation, as a place to start to get better, and then they can start to define and start to envision a better, more secure organization that ultimately in the long run, as this program grows and more requirements are required from organizations, they're ready for that. And that's really what I want to help you do. And the first thing and foremost is that your security vision has to align with your mission and values. I mean, this goes for anything, right? Like whenever you're whenever you're taking on something new, everything has to align. And make sure that your company's cybersecurity vision aligns with your mission and values. Long-term commitment. This is not a one-time project. I think a lot of organizations are taking that kind of attitude right now. And I'm not saying it's wrong to fill that checkbox right now, but what you should be doing is thinking long term. Start thinking in terms of what do I want to look like in a year? What do I want to look like in 2 years? What is it going to take to get to level 3? And what are those milestones? and start communicating in those terms so that the team starts to kind of buy into your vision. And you have to communicate this consistently from the top. The CEO of company, the CISO, the CIO, they're the people who have to be kind of leading this effort, because the moment that they start to say, well, I'm not going to follow this because of this, that's when everything starts to lose. Like your credibility foundation starts to get a little less secure. So please make sure that you get the buy-in from your leadership, and as a leadership, make sure you're bought into it. And if you're not, that's where you communicate with your IT team to come up with realistic expectations. You can sit with a consultant and say, here's the minimum requirement to be compliant. And again, that's a great starting point. And then start to work towards becoming what you feel and within your organization, and define security for you. So if it starts with you, then everyone underneath it will buy in. And maybe not even buy in, but they will adhere, because you are adhering to it, and it's your program, and they understand that this is part of the organization. So once you have your vision, you got to execute, right? And when you execute, one of the first things you want to do is solidify your goals. And like what we see a lot of is like really bad goals being established. You'll see things like, well, we just want to get our level 1. And it's like, okay, so what is that going to take? So in the military and outside of the military, there's a term called SMART. It stands for specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time bound. And this is how we establish goals for our teams. And this is what we use to create our goals. And if you use this kind of acronym and this kind of methodology, you'll see that your goals are built around like a solid understanding and communication between leadership and everybody underneath it. If you can say, okay, we're going to be level 1 compliant before July 1st, and then start to say, okay, what are the measurables? Like, well, we need to first do our gap analysis, like Ray said in a previous session. All right, cool. When do we need to have the gap analysis done? We need to have that done by 1 June. Okay, so what is it going to take to get the gap analysis done? And then you start making those kind of milestones, right? And as you make those milestones, one of the things I would tell you is what we notice is that leadership tends to get like too involved. From a leadership perspective, you want to provide the vision, and then look at your people, and you guys agree on the timelines for the milestones. But then as a leader, kind of take a step back and let them come to you and tell you how they're going to perform these tasks. Because once you start telling them exactly what to do, then they lose this creative kind of instinct that they all have as cyber operators. And you don't want to lose that. You want to empower that. So you want to look at them and tell them, okay, I'm expecting you to perform the gap analysis by 1 June. How are you going to accomplish this? And then let them come to you, and you build, they come to you at a 2 weeks, whatever you think the time frame, to let you know how they're going to accomplish this. And then you agree or disagree, and you make modifications at that time. But as a leader, please don't take the creative control away from your operators, because it'll just kind of make them, it'll turn them off to this kind of challenge. And that's kind of where we excel as cyber operators. When you tell us that we can't do something, we tend to like look at each other and say, let's go. So please don't take that away. So you'll notice here what we have is kind of like a milestone framework. So you say, yeah, month 1 through 3, gap assessment complete. And again, for you as a leader, this is kind of what you're looking for, right? You're at a strategic level. You don't want to get it too far into the weeds to the tactical, and you definitely don't want to be invested in the operational, level details that need to be accomplished. You want to stay kind of surface level. You want to be able to kind of look at them, and you want to be able to, understand what they're telling you. So when they're providing you progress reporting, make sure that they're telling your story your way, whatever it takes for you to understand. And that'll be different for every organization. Every organization leadership level is going to understand things differently. So as operators, we need to understand that. And as leadership, you need to tell us that. Do not be afraid to look at your people and tell them that you don't understand what they're telling you. Right now, as far as like security goes, we live in a world where there's a lot of graphs. There's a lot of donut graphs for whatever reason, a lot of numbers being displayed. And from a leadership level, it's my understanding that this is not making sense. So please don't be afraid to tell your people this isn't making sense so that you guys can come together and agree on, what metrics are going to be displayed, how you're going to measure success or failure, and who are the people that are going to be responsible for making sure that progress is being made to meet the milestones. And ultimately, from a leadership perspective, money is everything. So if you could tie your budget cycles to the contract timelines, and then tie your milestone framework to those budget cycles, you'll be so much better off. And you'll notice that your CEOs, your C-suite will be more willing to spend money to make sure that this happens, because it's part of the budget. This isn't like a lot of leaders told us that they get really upset because it's not embedded into the budget when it could be. We knew that this server was going to be going out of life cycle and out of support at this time. This OS is going out of support at this time, and they didn't tell us. And that upsets them. And a lot of people don't spend money on cyber because they don't understand it. And if you can help your organization, help your leadership understand this stuff, then there'll be more, and you can tie it to the budget cycle and stuff like that. They'll be more than willing. I don't know about more than willing, but they'll be more willing to spend the money on these type of things. So after that, you want to lead by example. Be like we talked about it before, that leaders' behavior sets the tone for the entire organization. I can't stress that enough. I have not been part of a successful cyber audit or a successful cyber organization where leadership isn't a huge part of the success. And they don't even have to be heavily involved, but they definitely lead by example. They're the ones who complete the training first. They're the ones where if you do have the opportunity to have test bed systems, and these are the systems that get the patches before everybody else does. These are the people. These are the leaders that are like, no, I want to be part of the test bed because I'm not going to ask anybody else to do something that I won't do myself. These are the people that are just kind of step up and kind of lead by example. When everybody kind of sees that, you start to notice as an organization, like I won't say complaining, but kind of like those little comments of, well, why do I have to do this? Those tend to go away, because if the leader can do it at a very high level, then there's no reason for me not to do it. So as a leader, if you can lead by example, man, you'll help your organization out. So, like, I can't even tell you how. There's not really a measurement for it, but I can guarantee you that it's been my experience that that'll go a very, very long way. Another thing that I would encourage leadership to do is learn and prepare for the future. Where right now you're worried about CMMC level 1, start to learn about level 2. Start to learn about level 3. Look outside of CMMC. Within the DoD, I can tell you that we like CMMC is kind of based around NIST 800-171, and it's not a bad program, but within the DoD we kind of live more within 853. So I would tell you to start looking into 853. The two overlap a lot, but 853 is more the security requirements. And you'll start to kind of see the roadmap of where all this might be going, because 853 might be the wave of the future. As you look at what the Europeans are doing, they're under GDPR, the General Data Privacy Rights Act, right? And what that is like they're a lot stricter on what happens with people's PII. Start to learn about those things. Start to learn that this will help you provide and create your vision for the future. Your future might be to go across the pond and do business in Europe. And if you are going to do business in Europe, then you do have to get ready for GDPR. And you start to notice that fundamentally, all of these programs kind of start, like they kind of have the same baseline. So, as Ray kind of said in her session, there's a lot of really, really good things already taking place. As a leader, your job is to help articulate that, help, kind of display that message to everybody so that if there's a lot of really good things already and we can get better. And this is how we're going to get better. And this is, the milestones and these are the smart goals that it's going to take to get better. And as you kind of go through that process, you'll start to notice that this was already part of our operational organization. So why did we make such a big deal of this? And you made such a big deal of this because you had to, right? It was something new. It was something we all kind of saw coming, but it doesn't mean that it's not going to disrupt, your organization. And if you can better prepare your organization for that disruption, you'll start to notice that as you move through, GDPR 853, that your company's resiliency is well past, that making that even a disruption. They're just more, I'll never say welcome, because security is never supposed to be a welcoming thing. It's always, it's always going to be a disruption. But if your company has the right vision, the right programs in place, then those become easier to take on. And then for your organ, like one of the things we tell every leader is, I have this quote that says, like, great leadership isn't just about the effectiveness of today, but the efficiency of tomorrow. And as a leader, one of your goals is to get ready for next year, to build that lasting excellence. And when you're looking at who you want to hire, if you want to bring on a consultant, as we kind of stated earlier, make sure you get a consultant that's going to partner with you, that's going to tell you what you need to hear, that's going to be an effective member of the team, so that as your company grows and grows and grows, they're able to be honest with you, and they're able to be, have that kind of empathy that it takes to kind of make this succeed. As you look at your processes, like, processes are always kind of very, very, like, they're probably the thing that people hate doing the most. People hate creating documentation, and they just want to get things done. And they see procedures as things that get in the way of getting things done. And to extent that's very true, but from a security compliance perspective, they're required. Your company needs to be doing things the same way every time. And once you can have that, you'll know that it minimizes, human error. It minimizes, you know just mistakes in general, whether they be procedural or human. And you'll have a lot more confidence in your program. From a technology perspective, make sure that your program, your security program, drives what technology you buy, and not that technology drives your security program. There's a lot of organizations out there that go and buy a tool and then make the program work within that kind of construct. And I'm not saying it doesn't work, but what I am saying is, don't let that don't let that be a hindrance and a speed bump for you to creating the security program that you want. Make sure that everything kind of fits and works for you, and make sure that it's producing the results and the documentation that you want to see. And ultimately, really, from an IT perspective, you should be able to look at your IT team and say, are you dealing with things that you feel like you shouldn't be dealing with because of the technology? And if you can have that conversation with your people, man, one, your people will love you, because given an opportunity to let you know what they think about the technology, and and how it's being deployed, they'll take it. And don't have that conversation until you're ready to have, to devote some time for that conversation, because it's going to be probably a lengthy one, but you'll be a lot more comfortable having those conversations. And make sure that you look at CMMC as the foundation. Like we talked earlier about continuous improvement, and CMMC is a great starting point. And you should take pride in having your CMMC level 1, your CMMC level 2, but don't stop looking and saying, how can we be better? How can we be better? And if you can do that, then as you grow, man, you'll just notice that the return on investment isn't going to your organization is going to save money, but not in the ways that you thought. You're going to save money on efficiency because your people are doing things faster, so they're not taking as much time. They may not need as many people to make things happen. And that's ultimately saving you time, and you'll have that loyalty from your team, and your credibility within your team, within the IT team, just kind of explodes, because they're just looking at you and they know that my leadership has my back because they've been part of this entire process from the beginning. And ultimately, again, your goal should be continuous compliance. In the DoD, we call it Cyber 365. And as I said in an earlier session, I think it's a little funny how we live in a industry that prides itself on the hundreds of thousands of new threats that created every day, but yet we're not taking security that serious. There's a lot of companies out there that get scanned once a year, and if you want to take security serious, that shouldn't be the process. But again, I understand the business side, the money side comes into play. But make sure that your goal is to say, okay, how can I continue to not just meet CMMC requirements, but to exceed and better prepare for any new requirements as they come along? So ultimately, what this, your call to action is, one, own the vision. If you haven't created a vision for your cybersecurity program, I highly, highly encourage you to create that vision. Just bring up your mission, your company's mission, your company's values, and you'll start to see that a lot of this is already in your company's mission and vision. You just need to fine tune it so it meets cybersecurity requirements. Set those measurable milestones. Meet with your teams. Make sure that they're realistic, that they're relevant. That when you ask, okay, here's our mission, and they say, okay, well, we need to do this, and ask the question, well, how does that pertain to the mission? And make sure that you're making those smart goals, and you're time bound, and everybody's held accountable to those goals. Lead by example. I mean, we covered this enough. I think within all of these sessions, the leading by example portion is, if you're a great leader and you can lead by example from a cybersecurity program, you'll notice that your cybersecurity program doesn't even become a topic of discussion. And that's ultimately what my goal was as a cybersecurity analyst and a cybersecurity engineer. The less time my leadership spent talking about what I was doing, the better, because it meant that they knew that I was getting done what I needed to get done, and I could do it, and they trusted me to get it done. And then build for operational excellence. Just make sure that this is something that you can continue to do, continue to do, continue to do, and continue to get better at, and then make those marks. Like, how can we be better? How can we be better? And ultimately, I think Ray hit it on. Like, she said it so many times. Just get started. The worst thing you can do is not get started. November will be here sooner than we think, and if you haven't done any of these things, then yeah, you definitely want to get started. But a lot of people are hesitant, they procrastinate. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that that's not me. No, that is me. I tell everybody that my level of expertise grows as the level of panic grows. So I'm not saying that's a good thing, but it is kind of my one of my specialties. And please don't take that like use me as a cautionary tale. And that's kind of everything. So, are there any questions? Or what I would love from our panel is kind of experiences that you've seen, with good leadership and bad leadership. We don't have to say names, we don't have to, give specifics, but I would really love to hear examples, good and bad from our panel if possible.
Yeah, I can jump, Frank. Absolutely. In the Navy, we had a captain. She led by example. She was the first one to take the PT test. She was the first one, to tackle everything head on, and she practiced what she preached, and that set the tone for everybody. So, but yeah, just the cybersecurity, make sure that they're not allowed to install programs on their home devices, things like that. It makes it easier. Yeah, great, but you should separate the work device and the personal device. But yeah, if they follow the example, everybody else is encouraged to. It sets the culture.
How about you, Ray? You got any experience or any stories you want to tell?
Say that again.
I was just wondering if you have any stories you can tell, good or bad.
From the experience I've had so far. Yeah. Oh, off the top of my head. um, no, I can't think of something off the
Yeah,
top of my head really
no,
quick.
yeah, I can tell you in the DoD, when someone fails, when a base fails a cyber audit, most of the time, the base, like they call them comm squadron, communication squadrons, or cyber units, the person in charge gets fired. So I've been in rooms where we got told we failed, and then the very next day they're like, no kidding, packing their house and getting ready to leave. Like people's
Yeah.
in the military, people's no kidding, like their career kind of depends on how well they do. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that these people, they're like, company grade officers, and then they go and talk to high level officers, and they're telling them, oh, we're good, we're good, we're good. And then the audit hits, and then it turns out that, oh my God, we're not good at all. So the higher ups look down and says, dude, you've lost all credibility. So I don't trust you anymore. And if I don't trust you, you can't be leading. So I've seen that. I've seen like some CMMC level 2 companies where again their whole mentality was like, well, we got it a year and a half ago, so we're good. And to the point, it was kind of crazy how nonchalant they weren't about it, because one of the requirements is BitLocker, right? You have to have BitLocker turned on your systems. And we were giving this guy a hard time because he turned on his system and he's like, oh yeah, this thing's compliant. And he turned it on and there was like no BitLocker, pin that popped up. And we were like, what the hell? I thought this thing was compliant. He, no kidding, looked at us and said, oh yeah, we took that out. Because it was a pain in the butt. And we took it off. And we were just like, man, come on, man. Like this is exactly what we're talking about. Like you're supposed to be leading the way. And he didn't like the fact that you had to put a 6-digit pin in when your system turned on. That like
6 days.
that was the inconvenience. And it kind of kind of irked us because, these are the people that lose their laptops and then all their information is out there, and it's upsetting. So that's been my experience.
Yeah, 6-digit PIN. What's so tough about that? Honestly, what's that? An
Right?
extra 10 seconds? Oh,
Yeah. Oh, it's so like, and then we were part of a panel where this organization, they kind of looked at us and they told us that there wasn't a system that they couldn't break into. And we were kind of like, okay, totally acknowledged. Yeah, I was part of a disarray team, and I totally acknowledged that. Yes, given enough time, there's nothing that's unbreakable. But it was a little funny because they looked at one of my systems, and I was like, cool, go ahead, show everybody that this can be done. And they went to turn on the system, and the BitLocker came on, and they literally looked at me and said, hey, put the pin in. I was like, no, this isn't how it works, bro. I was like, no, that's part of the security. And they're
yeah.
like, well, we can't do anything unless you put the pin in. And I kind of looked at the panel and I was like, exactly. Like this is given enough time, yeah, they could break the pin. But
Yeah.
security, like I just thought it was funny how nonchalant they were, just looked at me and like, put the pin in for this. And I was like, what? I mean, I'll tell you, I got into not in an argument with Apple, but one of the things I hate about Apple is, if you notice, their phones don't have like multi-factor authentication capability. You either have the PIN or you have the Face ID. We were talking to an Apple rep and we are like, dude, why can't you have both? Why can't I have my face recognition and then the PIN pop up? And they looked at us and they just, because we don't want that. We were just like, come on, man, like you're supposed to be helping leaders like make this stuff happen. So there's been a lot of those type of discussions that take place. That, I mean, Microsoft, like, again, I love Microsoft, but Microsoft's like mentality of, well, we trust you to take care of your systems is, it's a little rough, because the reality is, Ray, they could deploy a system that's CMMC compliant. Like they could do that, right? And then have you step back if you wanted to. But they don't do that because that would make it a little bit more difficult for them. And those are the little things where I'm just like, come on, man. Like everybody puts complete and utter faith in you, as they should, as I do. But you're kind of playing to people's ignorance just a little, in my opinion. I don't know. That's all I got, Felipe.
Well, actually, speaking of that, can you? Oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering, in my grad school student life, I'm also in the Microsoft Student Ambassador program, so I too sort of speak Microsoft. But before that, I was in the Women Tech Makers Ambassador program as part of Google, so I like kind of live between those ecosystems. Can you speak to the government cloud and the HI program and how useful those are or are not for people to sort of adopt those systems?
I don't know if I'm like the best ambassador for cloud, because from a government perspective, I think I'll separate my comments from government to like normal organizations, right? From a government perspective, I'll be very honest with you, and again, I might piss some people off when I say this. I think one of the biggest mistakes the government ever did was go to the cloud. Like, do I think the government should have gone to a cloud environment? Yes, but I think the government should have gone to a government cloud environment, not to an I don't want to speak on any of the cloud providers, but I think they should have had their own. That's my personal opinion. From a normal organization perspective, the cloud is an extremely, extremely good resource because it kind of does a lot of what the CMMC requirements are, and it centralizes them. It brings it together. So instead of having to focus so much on like individual little small details, if you do it right, you can have everything kind of centralized. I mean, it's to the point now where if you do get a new system and you deploy it via, let's say Microsoft Intune, then cool, you can deploy it to where it has a lot of those security requirements already met. So it's really good. You look at Microsoft Purview and, its DLP functions, and I tend to think that's exactly what companies should be doing, and, being able to kind of create the ability to determine where your, not just where your information goes, but how long it resides there. We went from a world of once you sent an email to somebody, it was there forever, to now you can send an email and say, hey, this email is only good for 2 weeks. And after that, the email and the information within the email goes away. And those are really, really good things that CMMC are starting to, ISO. I know HIPAA is really big into that. And I think those are cool things. The only problem I have with them is that it's starting to get to the point where the only way you can control that kind of email system is using the Microsoft tools. So they're tying everything together, so where people are starting to get handcuffed to one provider, and I think that's just a dangerous precedence to set.
I appreciate that.
I was hoping we'd have more discussion.
I agree.
I was hoping Ray would be like, yeah, I dealt with this one company where the CEO stalked, but no, I guess not. I guess he works with a lot of good companies.
No, to be honest, I had missed kind of like the beginning, so I wasn't exactly sure
Okay.
what you were asking. But a lot of what you're saying, I can agree with you on so many different aspects.
Yeah.
It's almost like I want to deep dive, but I know we have a certain amount of time. But I
All right,
agree
we'll
with what
get
you're
there.
saying.
I think John, you're just barely getting introduced to it, right? You're barely going into the CCA and CCP stuff.
I just got my CCA, so yeah. I mean, I've done a lot of RMF and what you're referring to, but as I'm just starting my journey as an assessor, looking into definitely getting into that more.
So your stories will come later as you
Yeah,
start to lose
I
hair.
mean, yeah,
As you start to lose
yeah.
hair, that's why I don't want
Hopefully,
to
we
go
get a good leader,
down that road.
like you were talking to. I'm already losing the hair. I'm holding on. So.
Yeah, I think these organizations, some of them are really pushy. I need my assessment and I need it now. And it's like, I'm not sure about that. Or, they are starting to see in reality they're not as informed as they thought that they were within their environment. So I think it's just it's a holding a mirror up to your business, which is a good thing. Sometimes
And it's
it
funny
takes.
because go ahead.
No, I was going to say sometimes it takes self-reflection, like anything in life, to realize where you can make improvements, where you stand. So it's a gift and a curse. Some people can't face themselves in the mirror, but in order to get to the next step in your business, if you have to do it, you have to face those ugly truths sometimes. And sometimes the ugly truth is, as management, you have almost not let your business go, but let it go in a sense of you're unaware to what's going on.
Have you been part of those awkward conversations where you're honest with like the C-suite and the IT people are like off to the side, and the C-suite people are looking at their IT people like, what the hell have you been telling me? And you're just there like, can I go now? Because
They're looking at them, looking at them, looking at me, looking at them, and everybody's just like.
Like, they get mad at you when they show you, because I show them the slides. I'll show them the slides. Like, dude, this is what I'm gonna brief for leadership. Wow, can we change this? I'm like, nah, bro. Like, that's like, I wasn't brought here for that. I'm sorry, but hopefully you guys can have those conversations. But it's kind of funny.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier, the assumption so I thought so and so was going to do this. Well, no, I thought so and so was going to do that. Well, this is such and such role, and it's like, okay, let's get on the same page. It's not a blame game. We have to just figure out how to get in alignment and figure out the best practice moving forward. You can't cry over spilled milk. It is, what it is now, but where are we trying to get to? So, just being accountable.
I could see you being great at that, right? Because, like, you have that kind of demeanor. You're nice and calm and everything. Where I'm more like, I'm in the back, kind of like laughing, like, oh my god, like I'm not egging them on, but I'm definitely not like being as calm and collective and probably as professional as you are. So I'm pretty sure you're one of the better ones.
I just laugh. I am calm, and then they go on their whole spiel, and it's like, okay, but let's get to the point. So they have this grand explanation, but they can talk, but they're not saying anything. So
yeah.
Well, this is excellent. Thank you so much. We're going to wrap this up, and we're going to meet John in the next session for our CMMC certification pathways, CCP, CCA, RMF, and the NIST 800-171. So continuing to be excited to learn all of these things. And thank you so much for this conversation, specifically related to the leadership, and then understanding those differences between cybersecurity and compliance, and where they overlap and where they're completely distinct. And I appreciate it. And also, who does what? I mean, just remember the story that was kind of popped into my head as we wrap up was just when I worked for a startup in Colorado. There was just one day, like, it was super icy by the front door. And this is where I feel like tone at the top. It's like, I wasn't going to actually take that issue to my boss. He would have had zero interest in it and really couldn't care. But I actually ended up with one of the C-suite guys, our director of operations, and was like, can we do something about that? That feels really dangerous. And he, 5 minutes later, he's out there with the salt. And I appreciated that. I think that's where employees really need to know. It's like, if you see something that's not on my job description, like, let's deal with the ice. But it was still something that I saw. I felt like it needed to be fixed, and I kind of felt like I knew where to go, and that somebody immediately was like, I'll handle that. And I feel like no matter what the issue is, if you can create a culture where people kind of feel like they know where to go to get that support, to get something handled, if they see something, feeling comfortable to say something. So
Totally agree.
Excellent. All right. Well, I leave you all, and we'll see you all in the next session. Thanks so much, everybody. And onward to John's session. Looking forward to it.